Relations between Iran and the United States have once again reached a critical turning point in April 2026. After weeks of military tension, regional escalation, and economic pressure, both nations agreed to a temporary ceasefire that shocked the world and raised hopes of de-escalation. However, beneath the surface, distrust remains deep, and the future of peace is far from certain. This article provides a comprehensive overview of the latest Iran-America news, covering the background of the conflict, the ceasefire agreement, regional involvement, economic impact, oil politics, nuclear tensions, and what lies ahead for global stability. 1. Historical background of Iran-America tensions. Iran-America relations have been hostile for more than 4 decades. The roots go back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which ended U.S. influence in Iran and led to the hostage crisis at the American Embassy in Tehran. Since then, sanctions, proxy conflicts, cyber warfare, and political hostility have defined their relationship. Over the years, brief moments of diplomacy, such as the 2015 nuclear deal, were followed by renewed tensions, especially after U.S. withdrawal from agreements and reimposition of sanctions. By 2025, relations had once again collapsed into open confrontation. 2. What triggered the 2026 crisis? The current crisis began due to a combination of factors: U.S. military presence in the Middle East, Iranian support for regional allies, accusations regarding nuclear enrichment, attacks on shipping routes and oil infrastructure. When Iran allegedly restricted movement in the Strait of Hormuz, global oil markets panicked. The U.S. responded with naval deployments and air surveillance, while Iran placed its forces on high alert. 3. Military escalation and near-war situation. By late March 2026, the situation had become extremely dangerous. Missiles were tested, drones were intercepted, and cyber attacks were reported on both sides. The Middle East stood on the brink of a direct war between Iran and America, a conflict that could have engulfed the entire region. U.S. officials warned Iran against crossing red lines, while Iranian leadership declared that any aggression would be met with a historic response. 4. The ceasefire agreement. What happened? In early April 2026, unexpected diplomatic efforts resulted in a temporary 2-week ceasefire between Iran and the United States. Key points of the ceasefire: suspension of direct military actions, partial reopening of oil shipping routes, pause on major sanctions escalation, agreement to begin indirect diplomatic talks. Although no formal peace treaty was signed, the ceasefire reduced immediate fears of war. 5. Role of regional and international mediators. Several countries quietly worked behind the scenes to prevent disaster. Among them, Pakistan played a notable mediating role, facilitating communication channels and proposing neutral venues for dialogue. Other countries, including Turkey, China, and European states, also urged restraint, fearing global economic collapse if war broke out. 6. Iran's perspective: resistance and sovereignty. Iran maintains that it is acting in self-defense. Iranian officials argue that U.S. sanctions are a form of economic warfare. Iran has the right to peaceful nuclear energy. American military presence destabilizes the region. Iranian media portrays the ceasefire as a victory of resistance, emphasizing that Iran did not surrender but forced negotiations through strength. 7. America's position: security and deterrence. From the U.S. perspective, Iran remains a major threat to regional stability. American leaders insist that Iran must limit nuclear enrichment. Iran should stop supporting armed groups. Freedom of navigation must be protected. The U.S. describes the ceasefire as a strategic pause, not a concession, and warns that military options remain available if diplomacy fails. 8. Nuclear issue: the core of the conflict. At the heart of Iran-America tensions lies the nuclear question. Iran claims its nuclear program is for civilian energy and medical use. The U.S., however, fears that enrichment levels could lead to weapon development. This disagreement has destroyed multiple agreements and remains the biggest obstacle to lasting peace. 9. Impact on oil and global economy. The crisis caused massive fluctuations in global markets. Effects included sharp rise in oil prices, increased inflation fears, stock market volatility, pressure on developing economies. The temporary reopening of the Strait of Hormuz stabilized markets, but analysts warn that any collapse of the ceasefire could cause another shock. 10. Israel and the wider Middle East. Although not directly part of the ceasefire, Israel's military actions in the region complicate matters. Iran accuses the U.S. of allowing Israeli operations that undermine peace. This creates a fragile situation where regional conflicts could quickly reignite Iran-America tensions.